one-time gateway of Texas retained its glory in rush and hurry of modern times. 1836–1936. A History of Jefferson. By Mrs. Arch McKay, Mrs. H. A. Spellings. 15th printing. And is told by individuals who once lived in Jefferson and by many who are now living and those who lived in Jefferson during her palmy days. Jefferson.
From the region of the Upper Trinity and the headwaters of the Sabine, each traveler tells us, as he passes, some new tale of how the wilderness is falling under the axe of the builders of habitations and opening up of the earth.
The town of Jefferson, in the southern division of our country, was but yesterday a mere name upon paper, and now, we are told, quite a number of buildings are going up. Several persons will have goods there directly. It is a town destined to concentrate a large inland commercial business.
Immigration from Europe is filling up the beautiful country in the far west.
Northern Standard, January 16, 1854. The above article was given through the courtesy of Lola M. Bell, Assistant to Advisory Board of Texas Historians. While Texas, this year of 1936, celebrates the centennial of its independence from Mexican rule, two cities of Texas will attain the anniversary of their birth. In 1836, the town sites of Houston, Texas, and Jefferson, Texas, were established, similarly on the banks of bayous. Houston, the largest of southern ports today, was founded on Buffalo Bayou, and Jefferson, Texas, equally important as a center of trade and commerce during its brief reign in the days before and following the Civil War, was located on Cypress Bayou. Jefferson is known as the
old-time metropolis of East Texas.
And there is something pathetic about Jefferson's history. In the days following the Civil War, Jefferson had a population of 25,000. It was the trading point of East Texas, and all roads led to Jefferson. A natural barrier in Red River backed water into Cypress Bayou to an extent that navigation was possible as far as Jefferson. Steamboats landed in Jefferson from New Orleans, and points on the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. River traffic in Jefferson goes back as early as 1845. The city of Shreveport was long considered the head of navigation on Red River and was for many years the depot of trade for the large scope of country tributary to Jefferson. About the year 1850 it became known that steamboats could ascend farther into the interior, and finally the extreme terminus of navigation was fixed at Jefferson, and a large portion of the shipping was diverted from Shreveport. No other inland town of the state ever attained the importance in river shipping that came to Jefferson in the late 60s and early 70s. As the extreme terminus of navigation on the waters of Cypress Bayou, Jefferson ranked among the established cities of the state, being second only to Galveston. Some of the most palatial steamboats on the western rivers, and there were palatial steamers in those days, plied between Jefferson and New Orleans. Among them were the Danube, Bessie Warren, Red Cloud, Iron Cities, Kuntz, John T. Moore and Lizzie Hopkins. The cabins were elegantly furnished, and the furnishings surpassed those of the best hotels of the country. Each steamer carried an Italian band which played at the landings, during meals, for balls in the evening, or whenever wanted for the waltz or Scottish. People dressed most elaborately in those days, both men and women. They carried immense trunks, with 2 or 3 compartments for hats alone. Suitcases were unknown. In the early days, large oil lamps with reflectors were used as headlights on the boats, and pine knots supplied the illumination for the Negro deckhands to see how to work. All boats carried signal lights in the smokestacks, which could be seen from all directions. A red light on the left, a green light on the right, they were known as
larboard, starboard.
The deckhands could not read, and in order to distribute freight, a plain card was placed over the name of the towns. For instance, Marshall, Texas, was known as
King of Diamonds,
Longview, Texas as
Ace of Hearts,
and Jefferson as
King of Spades.
The deckhands were told the freight went to
King of Spades,
etc., and a piece of freight was never known to get into the wrong place. The most troublesome of all freight to handle was mules. The deckhands often worked 18 to 20 hours without rest. Their songs were known as
Coonchines.
They had a haunting and somewhat barbaric quality, and the harder the Negroes worked, the more they sang, keeping perfect time with their feet. The captain's responsibility was great. He was responsible for the protection of life and property, and the captains were often most heroic. Many captains on Red River never refused passage to anyone unable to pay, and their deeds have been recorded in history. The largest steamers had a capacity of 6,000 bales of cotton. While Jefferson was crowded with traffic, there were landings at practically all the big plantations on the bayou and lake. Some of the wharves at Jefferson were built by Thomas Hinkle, grandfather of Tom Hinkle of Paris, Texas, for whom is named Hinkle's Camp on Cypress Bayou, founded by Mr. Hinkle during the days of the Texas and Pacific Railroad construction. A few months before the Civil War, the legislature, under Governor Pease, passed a bill for an appropriation of some $200,000 to be used for the widening and deepening of the waterways of Texas. To Jefferson was allotted about $21,000 for a new turning basin and the general betterment of Big Cypress. The work was only partially completed when the war broke out and operations ceased. As the war passed into its second year, Red River became vitally important to the federal government because the northern armies had not yet gained a foothold in that part of the country. After the capture of the forts below New Orleans, many of the Confederate ships fled to the safety and security of Red River and its tributaries. During the Civil War, the Confederate government established a slaughterhouse, or packing plant, at Jefferson through which to draw on Texas for a meat supply for the army. Cattle and sheep were slaughtered by the thousand and the dressed meat carried down to New Orleans, where it was reshipped to various branches of the army. The Federals sought to capture the meat supply of Texas, but were defeated, and the packing house continued to be operated until the end of the war. In those days, before the railroads became a great factor in the country's development, the growth of a town with water transportation was deemed certain, and many of these supposedly fortunate towns scorned the railroads when they began to span the continent. Such was the attitude of Jefferson when the Texas and Pacific put through its main line from Texarkana westward. At this time, about 1873, appeared J. Good upon the scene, the building genius of the Texas and Pacific Railroad, seeking a right-of-way for his road. Meeting with a cool reception and failing in his attempt to get the right-of-way through Jefferson, he left the town in disgust and chagrin, making the somewhat prophetic statement that
Jefferson would see the day when bats would roost in its church belfries and grass grow in its streets.
the Texas and Pacific, instead of going through the town, made a half-circle to avoid it, and today the station is small, unkempt, and a considerable distance from the town. Freight rates went high, and some time after this the United States government removed the natural dam that backed water up and made Big Cypress Bayou and the lakes navigable. Jefferson in its early days had no money and did not need any. The women spun the wool, wove the cloth, and made the clothes for the family. Shoes were paid for in hides. As Jefferson grew, towns sprang up to the west, and there was a continual stream of wagons going and coming. Mrs. Spearman owned the toll bridge, and Mr. Dalby, then a mere lad, was employed by her at 50 cents a day to keep the bridge. He is said to have often taken in $60 and $70 a day in toll. All the cotton raised in Louisiana, southwestern Arkansas, and North Texas was
wagoned
to Jefferson, and was often stacked up for 6 or 7 miles out waiting to be weighed. The annual receipts exceeded 100,000 bales. Farmers would take nothing but silver and gold for their cotton. They had no faith in bank notes and greenbacks, except when they went to pay their taxes. Then they exchanged silver and gold for paper money, which was worth only 75 cents on the dollar, but was accepted at face value by the government. The late Capt. W.R. White of Nevada is said to have been Jefferson's first merchant, while Bateman Bros. King, Andy, and Quincy were the leading merchants and cotton buyers. When a farmer got his money for his cotton, he received a gallon of whiskey free. Jefferson, in her palmiest days, is said to have had a population of 30,000. There was plenty of money and people seemed quite as anxious to pass it around as they were to get more, which spirit kept things moving. Exclusive social set. Jefferson even boasted an exclusive social set, left over from the southern aristocracy of antebellum days, and keeping up the customs in the steamboats and parlors of the city hotels, both of which were palatial in their appointments. An example of a steamboated reversiment follows. Regular Jefferson and New Orleans packet. For Shreveport. Grand by Grand Echo. Third, Morris Cotal, Alexander, Normans Barons and Way Landings. Stand and No. One in all insurance companies. The light draft passenger steamer. Lizzie Hopkins. J. T. Route, Master Sam Lawson Clark. Will run between Jefferson, Texas and New Orleans during the season. For freight or passengers, applied on board, Feb. 17 1868. Stockade. Just after the war between the states, the town of Jefferson was thrown into panic by the murder one night of a
carpetbagger.
Carpetbagger being the name given to those men who came into the southern towns immediately following the war to stir up the people, and especially the Negroes, against the authorities. It was necessary for the government to send troops to Jefferson to restore order. A stockade was built on the hill called
Sandtown.
This stockade was made of immense timbers, and was about 70,100 feet, with walls 15 feet high and broad enough on top for the soldiers to walk constantly. Many prominent men of Jefferson were placed in this prison, where life was most cruel and unbearable. Many died from exposure and pneumonia. Mr. Lev Ray told us that he made just one visit to the stockade, going with his mother and Mrs. Slaughter. Just after leaving to go home, Mr. Slaughter escaped. Mr. Slaughter had only one arm, but he proved himself a fast runner. He made his way to the river and cast a stone across. The soldiers, hearing the noise and seeing the water disturbed, began searching for Mr. Slaughter on the other side, while he followed the bank of the river into the city and to Allen and Ligon Wholesale and Retail Grocery Store on Dallas Street. Major Allen hid him in the basement of the store. When the soldiers came to look for Mr. Slaughter and started down in the basement, Major Allen said,
"All right, but what if there is a bulldog down there?"
The soldiers left immediately. This is just one instance of many narrow escapes from the stockade. The corral. The corral, now used as a swimming pool, and known to the young boys for years as the
Swimming hole.
Was the barracks for the Federal Army and Infantry, which was later moved to San Antonio. The headquarters for Gen. Buell was situated on the corner just across the Broadway Railroad crossing, east of the Cypress Bottling Works. Chief Justice Horn. Chief Justice Horn came to Jefferson in the early days of Jefferson's history, with the backing of the U.S. government to create discord between the white and colored population. He entered politics after serving as Chief Justice a number of years, and became judge. He later had as his opponent for the office Judge S.W. Morsley, who, regardless of the fact that every election box was compelled to have one Negro to help in the election, was elected Nov. 22 1882. A political meeting was held in Saylorville, Texas, 5 miles west of Jefferson, which many from Jefferson attended, and among those was Chief Justice Horn. After the meeting, the men from Jefferson stayed for a short time to chat with friends, but Chief Justice Horn was not interested and left. When he reached what is now known as the Old Freeman House, he was killed and his body was found in a deep ditch. Every manager of the election boxes was arrested, but to no avail, as it is not known today, in 1944, how or by whose hand he met death. Texas First Federal Court. The first federal court to sit in the state of Texas met in Jefferson in 1879 with Judge Amos Morrill on the bench. In a short time the court was made a circuit, which included San Antonio and Galveston. 3 generations of Jefferson men served succeeding terms as clerks of the court W. Singleton W. Singleton Jr. and J. O. Singleton. These men served for a total of 60 years. The first court met in the post office, which had been established in 1842 and was located in the northeast corner of Polk and Austin Streets, and was the only federal building in Jefferson. All records were kept in this building, and when word came that federal troops would possibly come through Jefferson and that all valuable papers and documents should be moved to a spot further interior for safekeeping, local authorities hastily gathered the court records and sent them to Dallas, from which place they had not been returned after 65 years, though efforts have been made to have them returned. The city of Jefferson, Texas. As a manufacturing district in 1871. The undersigned would respectfully invite the attention of capitalists, at home and abroad, to the manufacturing facilities of the city of Jefferson and its surroundings, with a view of securing such cooperation as our railroad prospects and natural advantages seem to warrant. We say railroad prospects because our city will shortly become the great railroad center of northeastern Texas. Here the International, Transcontinental, and East Line and Red River Railroad will all intersect ere many more months elapse, thus opening up direct communications with all the leading business centers in the Union. So far as railroads are concerned, Jefferson will become the Atlanta of all that portion of the state known as
northeastern Texas.
Associated with this fact is another equally significant and a manufacturing point of view. We have here within striking distance inexhaustible supplies of material for the manufacture on an extensive scale of an endless variety of articles, and for steam purposes we have living waters and fuel in abundance. Indeed, nature has here strewn upon the earth's surface and planted beneath it forests and mines immeasurable in extent and of inestimable value. Before proceeding, however, to detail the manner in which these should be utilized, we should invite attention to a few particulars respecting the city of Jefferson. The city of Jefferson is yet in its infancy. But a few short years have passed since the ground on which it stands was a wilderness, but its growth has been rapid and substantial. It now numbers not less than 12,000 inhabitants, and the business houses being constructed of brick, it wears an air of solidity, such as is seldom seen in the state. Its churches and many of its private residences are unsurpassed in the state, in points of taste and elegance, and its business men are quite as enterprising as those of any other city within the confines of the Empire State of Texas. Jefferson has already a national bank, a citizens' savings bank, and 3 private banks, but such is the extent of her trade even this number has not been found sufficient, and a charter has been secured for another national bank, which will soon go into operation. She also has a chamber of commerce, an iron foundry and machine shop, several planing mills, sash door and blind factories, the National Cotton Compress Company, etc. And here, too, is located the East Texas State Agricultural, Mechanical and Stock Raising Association. The exports from the city of Jefferson, for the year ending September 1st, 1886 were not less than 25,000 bales of cotton. For the year ending September 1st, 1872, the exports were cotton bales 76,328, dry hides 84,762, green hides 18,471, wool pounds 87,623, peltries 48,210, boys dark seeds bushels 9,721, cattle 5,381, sheep 821, lumber feet 121,000. The steamboat arrivals for the same period were 226, with a carrying capacity of from 225 to 700 tons each. Being situated at the head of navigation, on Big Cypress Bayou, a port necessitated by reason of the immovable raft, which long since formed in Red River. Above this point heretofore Jefferson has been compelled to rely on water transportation. It is, therefore, with a great degree of satisfaction that she witnesses the movements on foot to make her a great railroad center. When her facilities for transportation are thus increased, no town in northern or eastern Texas will have a brighter future or greater commercial advantages. For a long time past, the city has transacted more business annually than any city in Texas, with the single exception of Galveston. What then will be her capacity when the above-named railroads all come to her aid? Jefferson as a manufacturing district. But great as our city is as a commercial center, she will yet develop other and more important interests, and that too within a limited period of time, for it has been demonstrated to the entire satisfaction of all capitalists who have given their attention to the matter that there is not in the whole South a district which combines so many advantages for manufacturing on an intensive scale, such an endless variety of articles as the city under consideration and the country immediately surrounds it. In support of this statement, let us descend to particulars. There is, for instance, within the immediate neighborhood of our city more iron ore than can be consumed in centuries, and this ore is richer than any other yet known in the United States. 6 miles from the center of Jefferson are iron hills towering above the surrounding country, which alone will yield an inexhaustible supply of ore, and this ore is richer and more easily worked than that found in Missouri's famous
Iron Mountain.
But the whole country contains more or less ore of this character, and here, where the raw material is so abundant, and water and fuel for steam purposes so readily procured, and transportation by railroads and by water so accessible, there can be erected furnaces, forges and foundries that would successfully compete with any now in existence in this country. Already the largest iron foundry in the state is in operation 4 miles from the city, and 2 miles this side of the iron hills of which we have spoken, and this foundry G.A. Telly's at Kellerville is manufacturing on an extensive scale cooking stoves and heating stoves that are unsurpassed by any imported to this market, either in beauty and finish or in quality, and the plough manufactured by this establishment is pronounced by all those who are using it, and a large number are now in use, to be equal in all respects to the hoe and spear Avery plough, and much more durable by reason of the superior quality of our iron. Such is the demand for the products of this foundry that owner is now seeking to increase his manufacturing facilities by organizing a joint stock company with a capital of $200,000, as nothing short of this amount will enable him to fill his orders in the future. Again, 20 miles from the city, and adjacent to the route of the East Line and Red River Railway, we come to a vein of copper ore, impregnated with both gold and silver. This ore in the hands of this sayer has been found to be very pure, quite as much as any in the South, not excepting that from the Wichita country. The supply is by no means limited. In fact, its limits have not as yet been ascertained. In that vicinity, also, as well as in many other sections within striking distance of the city by rail, as soon as the projected roads are completed, there is a great abundance of cannel coal of a fine quality. Manufacturers will comprehend at a glance the significance of this fact, and know how to appreciate it. That there is coal enough of this character for all local manufacturing purposes there is no doubt. No section of country that can be named offers a better quality or a greater variety of timber for building and manufacturing purposes than that in the immediate vicinity of the city of Jefferson. For building we have, in the greatest abundance, the very best of pine, black walnut, gum, white oak and cypress. For manufacturing, we have not only the above named, but also hickory, cedar, bois d'arc, etc. The quality of our pine and oak is unsurpassed north or south, and at the mills as good a quality of black walnut as one could desire can be had in any quantity for $2.00 per 100 feet. Contrast that with the prices paid in the north and west, and the advantage we possess will be appreciated. For the manufacture of wagons we have an unlimited supply of hickory, bois d'arc, and white oak within striking distance, and for woodenware we have all the oak, cedar and cypress we need. Going west, along the line of the Texas and Pacific Railway, we soon come to those immense prairies, whose settlers must rely, during our day at least, on other sections for their building materials, wagon materials, furniture and wooden ware, and everything else which requires timber in its construction. Right here, then, at this end of that great thoroughfare, we should and must manufacture ready-fitted timbers for building, including shingles, sash doors, and blinds, and every other article needed in the construction of houses, as well as furniture and wooden ware for the same. We say ready-fitted timbers because these can be prepared by machinery, like sash doors and blinds, in a better manner and at much less expense than on prairies, and the purchaser will then only pay the freight on what he actually uses. That is, he will not be taxed for freight on waste materials. This brings us to the natural conclusion that here, where the materials are in their native state, should be the manufactories. That is, here should be the saw mills, the planing mills, the shingle machines, machinery for the manufacture of ready-made houses, furniture, wagon and wooden ware manufactories, etc. Besides, here too, where we have the iron and the white oak and the hickory, we should manufacture every kind of agricultural implement our state requires. There is no earthly reason why we should import these, why others in their manufacture should falter at our expense. We have all the requisites, all the essentials right here at home, let us avail ourselves of them. Then again, why are our hides sent abroad to be tanned and then returned to us at our expense, while our forests in this vicinity at least abound in red oak bark? Can any one assign one good and valid reason why this is done? Have we not room for 10 yards? If so, let us construct them, and exhibit our good sense in tanning our hides at home, and then instead of paying Massachusetts and other states for manufacturing our boots and shoes, let us do this ourselves. When we learn to act instead of employing others to act for us, then, and not till then, will we become independent. Here too, we should without delay erect cotton and woolen mills, cotton seed oil mills, cotton gin and cotton press manufactories, where nothing is required but capital, labor and enterprise. There is no reason why a broom, or a harness, or saddle, or a horse collar, or a carriage of any description, or a pump or a chair, or a barrel, or a single article of furniture should be imported into Texas. We, therefore, invite capitalists at home and abroad to unite their means with ours, and assist us in manufacturing what we have enumerated and other necessities of life. We have the locality for doing this in a preeminent degree, and hence the invitation is here extended. In this connection we should invite the special attention of boat builders to the fact that at Potter's Point on Fairy Lake, or
Fairy Lake,
as it is sometimes called, 15 miles from the city, is one of the most desirable places in the South for a dockyard. In that vicinity there is an abundance of white oak and other suitable timber for the construction of steamboats, and right here all the necessary machinery could be manufactured and forwarded by water navigation to that point. In the construction of boats on the shore of that lake there would be no loss of time by reason of the severity of the weather, not even during the winter time, as in yards further north. Our climate would greatly favor such an enterprise in that locality. The above suggestions are offered for the consideration of capitalists everywhere, and we would add that there is a disposition among our people to extend a hearty welcome to all who assist us in developing our natural resources. Lands for manufacturing purposes can here be had in healthy localities for a reasonable consideration, and the privilege of mining can here be had for nothing by way of encouragement to capitalists. Our section is as healthy as any in the wide world. No epidemic ever prevailed here, and those who desire to make their home in our midst will find the section as pleasant as any in the state, and the society one in which strangers would soon feel at home. Before closing, we would remark that the legislature of the state during the winter of 1871 passed an act exempting from taxation of all kinds, for a period of 5 years, all machinery introduced into the state for the manufacture of cotton and wool, and that act is still enforced. Also that during the same session, see General Laws of Texas, of 12th Legislature, 2nd Session, Chapter LXXX, a General Incorporation Act was passed. During the session a special act was also passed and approved, Dec. 2nd 1871, incorporating the
Texas Manufacturing Company.
4 of the incorporators were and 3 still are inhabitants of this city. Here also is the headquarters of this company. Any further information capitalists or manufacturers may desire respecting this locality will be cheerfully furnished by the undersigned. Artificial gas. In making history, the first artificial gas plant in Texas started at Jefferson, the gas being made from rich pine and pine knots, which were cut and placed in iron drums called
retorts.
These retorts were about 7 feet long, tapering off at one end like the mouth of a jug. The bottom was opened with a door which securely fastened the pine inside. The retorts were subject to intense heat. The steam-like substance which exuded from the pine during the heating process escaped through an opening in the top and into the iron mains or pipes, through which it was conveyed over the business section of town to ornamental hollow posts, on top of which were large globes. These were lighted at night and turned off in the mornings. Water often accumulated in the pipes, and a negro would remove it with a hand pump. This frequently took most of the day. The gas was forced through the mains by a large drum affair raised during the day and at night, gradually sinking, its weight forcing the gas through the pipes. The large foundation upon which this drum rested is still standing near the business part of town, and several of the
retorts
may be seen in various parts of town. These
retorts
have been donated for war purposes. Mr. Di O. Thomas, known as
Gashouse Thomas,
was sole owner and operator. Jefferson had first artificial ice. Tradition and a sworn statement before a notary public by the late Mr. William J. Benefield, an honored citizen of Jefferson, gives to Jefferson, Texas, the honor of having had within its city limits the first artificial ice plant in the United States, and many say in the world. Old settlers claim that it was in operation in the late 60s, but Mr. Benefield places the date at 1874 or 75 because he returned to Marion County from Red River County in 1874 and began working for Boyle and Scott as the first dispenser of artificial ice, using his own wagon and teams, and sold the ice for 10 cents per pound. He states that the ice was made in cakes 4 or 5 feet long, 2 or 3 feet in width, and 1 inch thick. The plant continued in operation about 1 year, when Mr. Boyle, who was the originator of the idea that artificial ice could be made, went north in search of someone to finance the making of the product. Mr. J. Hasty says that Mr. Boyle raised money before he went north to finance his project, but he was never heard of after he left, and his partner, Henry Scott, went into bankruptcy, while someone else profited by their pioneer efforts. Old citizens of the state say that the plant was moved to Harrisburg, Texas, near Houston, at the time Mr. Boyle went north. One incident remaining clear to Mr. Benefield was that one of his customers, a prominent citizen, bought 1,000 pounds of ice and placed it in his cistern so that he and his family might have an unlimited supply of ice water through the summer. However, the experiment failed, of course, and the man remained a daily customer of Mr. Benefield. It was Mr. Benefield, understanding that the machine was patented in the U.S. Patent Office. The gas used in the manufacturing of the ice was made at the plant, and the machinery was run by steam power. The old site of the plant is within the city limits, just beyond Willard Hill on Highway 49. Mr. Henry Scott, one of the founders, has a son and daughter now living in Dallas. At a meeting of the Southwestern Ice Association on December 3, 1926, Mr. F. R. Senate presented a motion, which was accepted by the association, the erection of a memorial in Jefferson to the honor of the man and place where the first artificial ice was manufactured in the U.S. However, that monument has never been erected. Churches. Episcopal Church. On June 8, 1860, the Friends of the Protestant Episcopal Church held a meeting in the Cumberland Presbyterian place of worship for the purpose of organizing an Episcopal congregation. Bishop Alex Gregg D. was called to the chair, and J. Benner's appointed secretary, the Rev. A. Widener being present. The secretary read the articles of association which had been prepared in accordance with the canons. Services were held in the Cumberland Presbyterian Church, Freeman's Hall, and private homes until 1886, when the new church was completed. Bishop Gregg was the first clergyman to preach in the new church, and Rev. T. Benners the first minister in charge. Members of the first vestry were E. T. Benners, of Villager, John Winslow, Dr. A. L. Walker, Dr. W. T. Rogers, Dr. H. Witherspoon, H. Black, and Judge W. S. Todd. At one time the church was badly damaged by storm, and Dr. D. Keane, who was minister in charge at the time, remodeled the church using the old building as a foundation. It was made into a beautiful brick veneer building. Presbyterian Church. The Cumberland Presbyterian Church in Jefferson was organized between 1846 and 1850 by Rev. Solomon Walt, who lived many years in the Pine Tree neighborhood, 3 miles from Longview, Texas, an old-fashioned Cumberland Presbyterian preacher. He was German, a diligent Bible student, and a strong theologian. The first church was a small frame building located on the corner of Lyon and Jefferson Streets. In 1873 the brick church was built by Mr. John Ligon on Jefferson Street. It was at that time the finest Cumberland Presbyterian church in Texas. Dr. Ben P. Modrell was the first minister in charge of the new church. The 1875 General Assembly met in the church. After the assembly, the railroads of Texas gave all the delegates from other states a free excursion over Texas, visiting Dallas, Houston, Galveston, and other places of interest. This beautiful church is still standing and in constant use. It is known as the Presbyterian Church USA. The Presbyterian manse of today, known to many of the
Old-timers.
The old General Rogers place
is said to be the oldest home in Jefferson, and is in good repair today. At the corner of this ancient building is found an old iron post, with a large wheel design near the center, which is placed there in the early days of Jefferson. Then the most direct route to the boat landing was along that street. Turning this corner and passing down Delta Street, the oxen trains cut the corner so close that some protection had to be given the property. And today the post hangs far out over the street as a result of the oxen running too close. Most of this information was given by Rev. W. Preston, who served the church twice, from June 1888 to December 1890, and from February 1910 to December 1911. The First Baptist Church. The 24th day of March 1855, the First Baptist Church of Jefferson was organized. The first addition to the church after it organized was William I. Bateman in June 1855. The deed to the church lots where the church now stands were recorded Oct. 11th. 1860. The first conference after the war was Jan. 28th. 1866, with Rev. H. T. Buckner presiding. Rev. Buckner was known later as
Father Buckner.
To his 800 orphan children, who loved him devotedly. He made Buckner's Orphans' Home the largest and most noted in Texas. W. The Penn and wife came to Jefferson from Lexington 10. And on February 24th, 1886 joined the First Baptist Church. Major Penn immediately became superintendent of the Sunday school, continuing in this capacity for 10 years. He was known in 1877 as
the famous state evangelist of Texas.
In 1866 a committee was appointed to solicit contributions to build a church. W. The Penn and B. Terry were the first building committee. This resulted in the brick edifice which is today standing on Polk Street. The church was dedicated Dec. 4th. 1869. Rev. D. B. Hale, grandfather of Jim, Miss Maybelle Hale and Mrs. Orley Hale Miller, assisting in the dedication service. In 1870 a pipe imitation organ was installed costing $1,000.00. This organ remained in use for 50 years. Rev. T. H. McLeod was the first pastor of the First Baptist Church in 1869, while the Rev. D. B. Culbertson, father of Cole. D. B. Culbertson acted as pastor while the church was using the Presbyterian and Methodist churches in which to worship. Dr. Tucker was pastor when the church was first organized, and he received $200 for his services during the year of 1855. The Southern Baptist Convention met with this church May 7, 1874, and was the largest ever held up to this time and first to meet in the state of Texas. Over 1,000 attended. Many distinguished divines were present, including Dr. A. J. Broadus, Dr. D. R. Graves, P.H. Mull, J. L. Burr, W. W. Laundrum, and many others. W. W. Laundrum Jr. was ordained as a minister during the convention. His father delivered the charge. The convention held until May 12, when the visitors were taken on a free tour of the state of Texas, through the courtesy of the Texas and Pacific Railroad. In January 1877, J. H. Rowell, S.R. was elected superintendent of the Sunday school, a position he held about 30 years. Rev. S. A. Hayden was pastor of the First Baptist Church for 5 years. He was given leave of absence in 1882 to visit Europe and the Holy Land. In 1883 he resigned to take possession of the Texas Baptist at Dallas. Dr. Bell J. Anderson, father of Mrs. Jody Rowell, was another much beloved pastor during the latter years of the church. Plans are at present being rushed to repair the building, preserving the original exterior architecture. Jefferson Methodist Church South. Pastors. The first Methodist preacher to be appointed to Jefferson was the Reverend James W. Baldridge. The year was 1844. That Methodist preachers had preached in Jefferson prior to this date is very likely. The great and widespread Harrison Circuit covered this country, and, in all likelihood, the modest settlement which sprang up at the head of navigation was a preaching point for the circuit rider. The Rev. Mr. Baldridge had joined the conference in 1843. He served Jefferson for 3 years, the records state. Jefferson was in the East Texas Conference as an appointment the first year that conference was formed from the older Texas Conference. Later in 1867, the church was in the North Texas Conference, and in still more recent years, the territory came back into the Texas Conference. At the close of the year 1845, the church reported 50 white and 3 colored members. The custom of having the slaves join the church was continued through Civil War days. By 1845, a number of churches had grown up through the immediate country about Jefferson, so the work was listed as the Jefferson Circuit, with the town as the principal church. The membership reported that year was 508 white and 89 colored. A complete record of all pastors for Jefferson from 1855 to the present day is preserved. The names of some from the years 1847 to 1855 are missing. The famous bell. Legend held dear in Jefferson says that in the year 1854 the famous Menely Bell foundry of Troy, N.Y. was called upon to cast a silver bell for the Methodist Church. To assure a silvery tone, 1,500 Mexican silver dollars were raised and sent to the foundry to be melted down and cast into the bell. That bell hangs in the belfry of the Methodist Church today. Some of the present citizens of Jefferson tell that the 1,500 silver dollars were the gift of one man, famous and beloved in the section, Mr. F. A. Schluter, and that the date was 1858 since that is the date on the bell. The bell was brought by water down the Ohio and Mississippi rivers to New Orleans, then back up the Mississippi and Red Rivers to Shreveport and through Caddo Lake and the Cypress to Jefferson. The church buildings. The Methodist church building entered into the early history of Jefferson. In the early days, a private school was taught in the basement. Some existing records of the Jefferson Baptist Church point out that the preaching services of the Baptist were held
in the Methodist Church.
Possibly in the years of prosperity of the 50, a fine brick building is revealed in the remarkable
bird's eye view
picture of Jefferson, which is preserved in the Carnegie Library. It took its place with the magnificent structures which had been erected by the Presbyterians and Baptists in the same period, the
fair 50s.
The Methodist building was condemned some 50 years ago, razed and a new wooden structure built, using a part of the original foundation of the brick building. That wooden building is the existing Methodist church of today. Thus Jefferson Methodism has probably seen 3 buildings in its over 90 years of history. Great meetings. In 1860, the East Texas Conference met in Jefferson on October 24-30. A half-dozen young preachers were admitted on trial at this session who were to go out and make history in the state and church. Among these was one John H. McLean, who served in Jefferson for 2 years, being sent to Jefferson in 1863 and who in 1874 and 1875 served as presiding elder of the Marshall District, of which Jefferson was a station. He became an influential figure in Texas Methodism and education. There was excitement in Jefferson and Texas in those October days over the national presidential election. Portents of civil conflicts were plentiful, and when news that Abraham Lincoln had been elected president reached Jefferson during the conference session, many declared that it meant war. When the next session of an annual conference met in Jefferson 10 years later, 1870, Jefferson was in the North Texas Conference, the Civil War having come and gone, but its effects very present. Some of the honored names of 1860 were missing. Among these was the name of Rev. W. Hill, who was pastor in Jefferson during 1860. He was killed at Fort Donelson in 1862. Gifts to the church now recalled. Property. First title to property on which to build a church was granted in 1848. First church evidently stood in property to which the church did not hold title. Mr. Allen Urquhart.
Sold.
The $100.00 of the transaction seems to have been given by Mr. Urquhart to the trustees of the Methodist Episcopal Church, South, in the town of Jefferson, the lot on which the present church stands. Construction of the brick church must have started shortly, for many older residents of Jefferson today state that
The Methodist Church was the first church in town.
Mrs. Mamie Tully Smith remembers hearing a former slave of her father tell how her father put him to work wheeling brick and mortar and how tired he became. He spoke, however, of what a great honor to him it was to work on the Methodist Church. The lots on which the parsonage was later built were acquired in 1866. One lot was purchased for $100.00 from a Mr. and Mrs. Rocks. The second was
Purchased
from Mr. F. A. Shooter for $500.00, the money being given by Mr. Shooter himself. It was this honored resident and pioneer Methodist who served as one of the trustees in 1848 when the church lot was acquired and who gave the whole $1,500.00 in Mexican silver dollars to go into the bell. Mr. J. T. Murphy, a wholesaler with a great business, likewise served on this board of trustees, and it was he who carried the dollars on a steamer to New Orleans for shipment to New York. The gas heating system. There is a bronze plate hanging on the wall of the church with the following inscription:
The gas heating equipment
in this church was given. Why? Miss Bertie Taylor, in memory of her brother, Ward Taylor. On the opposite wall rests this inscription:
The electric fence.
In this church were given by the Wurtzboar, in memory of his wife, Mrs. Lavinia Clementine Wurtzboar. This last year, 1935, Miss Bertie Taylor turned over to the church for safekeeping a copy of the
First Directory of the Jefferson Methodist Episcopal Church, South Jefferson Station, Marshall District, East Texas Conference.
It contains a letter to the membership from the pastor, list of former pastors, presiding elders, bishops, lists of the official boards, ushers, assessments, order of church worship and role of the membership. It is impossible to include all the many gifts to a church from every faithful and unselfish member and friend of the church. Gifts of service are continuous and do not stand out as these single ones. The organ. In the basement of the Methodist Church is the Sunday school organ given in memory of little F. A. Schluter, only child of Mr. W. P. and Mrs. A. L. Schluter. F. Died at Shoe Springs on August 21, 1892 at the age of 8 years. By adding to the savings their son had kept over a period of time, Mr. and Mrs. Schluter bought the organ to be used in the basement for Sunday school. The gift was most probably made in 1892 or 1893. Several Jeffersonians say that the gift was made shortly after the child's death. Roman Catholic Church of Jefferson, Texas. Immaculate Conception. In April 1866, James M. Murphy and Allen Urquhart of Jefferson, Texas, donated, for the purpose of building a Catholic church and school, to Bishop Claudius M. Dubriez, Catholic Bishop of Galveston, Texas, lots 10-11-12 and Block 29, Urquhart Division. Said lots fronting 50 feet on Polk Street and 150 on Lafayette Street. These lots are where Sudbury's store now stands. The contract for building the church was given by Rev. J. L. Gerard, a Catholic priest, to Mr. Bernard Whitcomb of Nacogdoches, Texas. He was assisted by George Whitcomb and Tony Hillenkamp, and the building was completed in 1869. In 1870, William H. Ward deeded lots 10-11-12, Block 28 on Lafayette and Vale Streets to Rev. J. L. Gerard, and the church was moved to this location, where it now stands. Rev. J. L. Gerard is supposed to have assisted in the moving of the church. In 1870, the Catholic Sisters of Charity from Maryland had a Catholic school at the corner of Henderson and Market Streets. In 1875, the Hebrew congregation appointed a committee to consider buying the Catholic school building, the committee being composed of H. Goldberg L. Goldberg, J. Weinstein P. Aldridge Jonay A. Rosenthal and I. Lewis. This committee appointed a committee to represent the Hebrew Sinai congregation consisting of E. Mark L. Goldberg A. Rosenthal and E. Aberstadt to purchase the property, which they did, including lots, buildings, and furniture. The Sisters of Charity of Maryland was represented by R. Wolof. The property is still owned by the Hebrew Sinai congregation and is in excellent condition. The Catholics later built a two-story frame building on Vale Street adjoining the church. The building is now used as an apartment house, the school having been discontinued many years ago. Excelsior's history. The northern end of the hotel, of frame construction, was built in the late 50s by Captain William Perry, from New Hampshire. Captain Perry was killed, through mistaken identity, by a Yankee soldier as Captain Perry was standing on the corner near his home. Captain Perry's daughter, Lucy, is said to have been the first child born in Jefferson, and was the first native Jeffersonian to be married there. She was married to Captain Claiborne, and to them were born 4 children: Perry, Howard, Fanny, and Lucely. Captain and Mrs. Claiborne spent all of their married life in Jefferson, and the home place is still in excellent condition. The Excelsior Hotel was originally known as the Irvine House and in 1871 was operated by Mr. A. Britton. Mrs. Kate Wood acquired it about 1877, and at her death the property was left jointly to Mr. George Niedermeyer and her daughter, Mrs. Neely. The present proprietors are Mr. and Mrs. Walter Niedermeyer. The old record books show the signatures of many noted men, among who were Jacob Astor, June 30, 1878 W. H. Vanderbilt in 1881 Gen. Grant Feb. 7 1881. Near the top of a crowded column of signatures is the name of J. Good. At the bottom of the page, in the same handwriting, is the notation,
The end of Jefferson, Texas.
An old advertisement of the Irvine Hotel appears in the 1871 directory and states,
Stages arrive at and depart from this hotel daily.
The Post Office. The property on which the Post Office and Federal Courthouse now stand was donated by Mrs. Kate Wood, once owner of the hotel. Today the hotel is noted for the many beautiful pieces of antique furniture. Among them is a
Button bed,
a sweet and carved walnut, old-fashioned secretary, settees, marble-top tables, quaint lamps, a massive chicorine square piano and its still with needle-point upholstery, and many lovely pictures, one worked in wool, valued at $1,000. For each table in the spacious dining hall there was a revolving silver caster with the various glass bottles for pepper and salt, vinegar, pepper sauce and ketchup.
Queen Mab.
In 1877 Jefferson gave a celebration in imitation of Mardi Gras, as put on at New Orleans, Louisiana, but called it
Queen Mab.
borrowing the conception from Shakespeare, with whose plays even frontiersmen and pioneers were familiar. The street parade was several miles in extent, made up of floats decorated with flowers and grotesques, carrying innumerable fairy folk and punctuated with bands of music with
Queen Mab.
herself as central figure, the whole
Blowout.
winding up with a grand ball. This was an annual affair for many years. Dr. George T. Beale of Dallas, Texas, tells us that far back in slavery times Jefferson was one of the most famed towns of the South, and was set down in the school geographies as the
Emporium of the Southwest.
Jefferson has truly lived up to its slogan,
Queen of the Cypress.
Many visitors come from Dallas, Fort Worth, and even El Paso and many other towns to enjoy the fishing and hunting that can be found in the pine woods and lakes surrounding the historic old town. An advertisement of a famous old hotel operated here, the Haywood House, Jefferson, Texas' largest and finest hotel building west of the Mississippi, has been fitted up in a style of elegance and comfort that entitles it to the patronage of the home and traveling public. The rooms are comfortable and have new furniture. The table supplied with the best the market affords and the servants attentive. In a word, it is the business of the proprietors to consult the comfort of guests and to make the house a desirable stopping place. Terms: board and lodging per month, payable weekly $10.00 without lodging per month, payable weekly, advance $7.50 transient customers, per week $15.00 transient customers, per day $3.00 single meal $1.00 W.T. Rives proprietor, Jefferson, Texas. The annex to the Haywood home is the present home of Mrs. Lizzie Haywood. McDonald's Machine Shop. In the Machine Man's History of Jefferson, the story is incomplete without the mention of what is now the Jefferson Foundry and Machine Shop, a descendant of one of the community's enterprises, now owned and operated by E. W. McDonald. The original machine shop was Miles & Co. and its beginning about 1870. Morris and McEvown followed as the new steps in the ladder of the foundry's ownership. Bauer acquired Morris' interest in the business and the name became McKinhown and Bauer, later McKinhown and Lyoni, and finally McKinhown became sole owner. The foundry burned in 1890 and the same year the McDonald shop started its career. McDonald, father of E. John and George started the business with the help of his 3 sons, all of whom became noted machinists in East Texas. Mr. McDonald came to Jefferson, Texas, in 1886 and operated a flour mill and later had charge of the city gas system. When the boys were old enough and trained as machinists, Mr. McDonald went into the machine shop and foundry, and together they built a business which is considered one of the most complete machine shops in East Texas. The present owner, E. McDonald, is considered an authority on much of Jefferson and Marion County history. He is a hobbyist of note and collects authentic markers of the country's history. His ability is accepted with a note of finality on any mechanical questions. Sedbury's Drugstore. One of the leading drugstores of Jefferson is Sedbury's. It has been in business in Jefferson since 1865 and is said to be the oldest drugstore in Texas, or even in the United States, continuing under the same name. For more than 75 years the store has been serving the people of this and surrounding territory carefully and efficiently. The Kelly Plow Works. The name Kelly has been identified with East Texas iron ore development since the Civil War and Reconstruction days. But in order to have a better appreciation of the Kelly family, we copy from a paper that was prepared by Hubert M. Harrison, Vice President and General Manager of East Texas Chamber of Commerce, and a copy was sent to Mrs. McKay, a relative, by Mr. L. Kelly. It follows
About 7 years after the historic Battle of San Jacinto, while Texas was a republic, John A. Stewart, later brother-in-law of G. A. Selly, came to Texas from Tennessee and began making small crude plows in a little shop operated by a man named Saunders near Marshall, Harrison County, Texas. 5 years later, in 1848, Stewart moved his plow patterns and tools to a popular campsite for wagoners called 4 Mile Branch, 4 miles west of the then thriving Old Jefferson. Here he formed a partnership with Zachary Lockett, a brother-in-law, and the new firm of Lockett and Stewart continued making the little plows and operated a general repair shop.
Jefferson, founded in 1836, was head of navigation in Cypress Bayou, a small tributary of Red River, and before the advent of railroads was the metropolis of North Texas and trading center of a vast surrounding area. George Addison Kelly, of pioneer Scotch-Irish ancestors, came to Texas in 1852.
He was born in 1832 in Greene County, Tennessee, the 7th of 12 children.
At the age of 17 he, with part of the family, migrated to Louisiana and located in a homestead grant in Natchitoches Parish. His pioneer spirit urged him toward Texas, and 3 years later young George, 20 years old, landed in Jefferson via steamboat on which he was a mate.
Believing this busy frontier held opportunities for an ambitious young man, he located at 4 Mile Branch and began his career in a little shop by the side of the road. He soon acquired an interest in this primitive industry and later purchased full ownership.
The first crude cupola for melting iron in the little foundry used charcoal, and the blast was produced by horse-driven bellows. The little shop prospered and expanded, and a steam engine and improved cupola were soon installed. Its products, with the original crude plow, cast iron stoves, cooking utensils and machinery repairs.
The camping wagons wanted cowbells for their grazing oxen and cattle, and the little shop made cowbells, thousands of them. Farmers were needing and demanding more and better plows.
George A. Kelly met this urgent demand by designing in 1860 the famous Kelly Blue Plow, the foundation stone of this near-century-old industry. A tribute at the time of his death in 1909 stated, "Here is a pioneer who made a plow, and a plow made Texas." From the erstwhile little shop at 4 Mile Branch, renamed Kellyville in honor of its founder, the many camping wagoners, after disposing of their farm and ranch, produced in Jefferson hauled plows and other products throughout the expanding Southwest, and the name Kelly became a household word. During the Civil War and Reconstruction days, iron was very scarce, so this pioneer industrialist built a furnace, and from the abundant East Texas ores smelted high-grade pig iron for his own use and sold surplus tonnage, which met with great favor. Charcoal was used for fuel, but this was costly and could not compete with later developed cheaper cook fuels, and after several years of successful operation this furnace was abandoned, having served its useful purpose. This early day iron maker predicted that when the need appeared for iron and steel produced from East Texas ores, an economical fuel process would be developed. Fulfillment of this prediction is near. Large smelters are being constructed at Danafield and Houston, Texas, and a gas-fired furnace providing sponge iron is near completion in Longview.
Soon after the outbreak of the Civil War, G.A. Kelly raised a company of soldiers, was commissioned captain and reported for service.
His company was accepted, but he was detailed to continue producing plows and utensils needed by civilians, also cast iron for cannonballs.
When railroads began to cross Texas, the wagoners with their long wagon trains gradually disappeared from the rough, muddy roads.
Boats ceased to ply the bayou and the important trading center of Jefferson lost its prestige.
Then the Kelly foundry and factory were totally destroyed by fire, with no insurance.
In 1882, salvage from the wreck was moved to Longview, a new railroad center. Beginning anew in Longview, this rebuilt plow factory gradually expanded into an imposing agricultural implement factory the length and shadow of one man. Here is manufactured from raw material a wide variety of plows and implements for all types of farms, including the old blue plow, which has retained its popularity for almost a century, a continuing tribute to its inventor. Operating profits in part were reinvested, and the present substantial structure has been built entirely from earnings. Full ownership is still in this early family. Among the family relics is the 200-pound bell pot silver used by the boat which brought the ambitious Kelly to Texas, also one of his old cowbells and an antique plow. In recognition of this pioneer industry, the Texas Highway Commission erected a granite marker on the original site of the Little Plow Shop at 4 Mile Branch. This pioneer industry, the only full-line plow factory in the Southwest, for 9 decades has had only 2 president managers, the founder, George A. Selly, and his son, Robert Marvin Selly, now president.
Since the days of the Republic of Texas, nearly 100 years from the little shop by the side of the road and from its present well-equipped factory, the G.A. Kelly Plow Company, through prosperity and adversity, has continuously supplied plow tools to 5 generations of farmers in Texas and adjoining states.
Truly civilization follows the plow.
Smelter was built in 1887. About 1887, John A. Cruz of Chicago promoted a 6-ton furnace to smelt the surface deposits of iron ore found near Ore Switch and Lasseter on the L.R.N.T. Railroad. The smelter operated intermittently from 1887–1905, under changing managers, until the high cost of transporting coke for fuel for the furnace made profitable operation impossible. Several governmental, federal as well as state investigations and surveys were made of the ore pits in an effort to ascertain the possibility of profitable exploitation. Had the navigability of the bayou remained unchanged, it is highly possible that Jefferson might have regained the prominence and prosperity it enjoyed during the days of the great river traffic. The Nash Iron Works. The Nash Iron Works was built in 1847, was operated by Bruce and Ab Nash, and was located 18 miles west of Jefferson on the Coffeyville Road. The main output consisted of wash pots, all kinds of kettles and kitchen utensils, and cannonballs. In connection with the iron works, there was operated a pottery, where plates, bowls, pipes and jugs from 1 quart size to 10 gallons were made. Those plants were in operation during the war, but no records exist as to how long after the war. Homes. Beginning with what is known as the Presbyterian manse, and was, in the early days, known as the Gen. Rogers home, we have what is conceded to be the oldest home in Jefferson, though along with this may be mentioned the following. The stately mansion of the late W. H. Schluter stands out as a monument to the city. The home has remained in the Schluter family since it was built many years ago and is located on Line Street. The S. W. Morsley home was built by Mr. J. The Preston, later known as the Norwood home. It is said to have been built without nails in the building, only wooden pegs being used, and all of the large windows were made by hand. Another of the old homes is that of Dr. Tahian. Just west of this is the home of Mr. and Mrs. Brennan Welland, which was built in the early 50s by W. K. Mabry, brother of Mrs. T. J. Rogers. Just north is another of the early homes, the Mackay home. While it was not built by the Mackays, they have owned, and it has been occupied by some member of the Mackay family for years back. Today it is owned by Mr. and Mrs. Arch Mackay. Mrs. de Graffure, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Northworth, who spent her childhood in Jefferson, came to the old home and asked permission to go all over the place.
Peep into the closets.
And even to climb the back fence, all of which was gladly permitted by Mrs. Mackay. And so happy memories linger in the old home for those who have long since moved to other cities and states. They love to come.
Boom.
And all true Jeffersonians are always glad to welcome them. On Broadway stands a spacious home that numbers among the oldest and was built by Mr. Alley, father of Mr. Tuck Alley. It is claimed to be about 85 years old. It is built upon a high terrace and to the younger generation has been known as the W. Ward, the Sol Spellings, and now the Brehorn. It is a most comfortable colonial home and has just recently been repaired by Miss Florence Weil, niece of Mr. Brewer and the present owner. Miss Weil makes her home in Riverside, California. The home of Miss Willie Rowell is considered among the early homes of Jefferson and was owned and occupied by Mr. Quincy Bateman and family during the thriving days of Jefferson. The antique furniture in the Rowell home today brings many expressions of appreciation for things so beautiful, and it is considered a privilege to enjoy the treat of being permitted to
take a peep.
The present home of Judge T. The Rowell was formerly the home of P. J. Graham. After Mr. Graham's death, his widow was married to Mr. Overall, who was a printer and had his office and press in the home. The original Graham home was purchased by Judge Rowell and remodeled, being today a handsome, modern two-story building on Walnut and Henderson Streets. The J. L. Eckhart home, 2 miles west of Jefferson, is possibly one of the oldest homes in the immediate territory, and has been in the Urquhart family since the early days of Jefferson. It is now the property and home of Mrs. Desai Urquhart Mosley, granddaughter of Allen Urquhart, who helped in the founding of Jefferson. Across the highway from this we find another antebellum country home, said to have been built by Mr. Ligon. It later became known as the J. T. Preston home, and today it is owned by Roy Spellings, where he maintains a dairy. On the place is a Scopnong arbor which produces delicious grapes. The arbor is 60 by 85 feet, and one vine measures 16 inches in circumference. This arbor is said to be 80 years old. The Oppenheim home, owned and occupied by a member of the family for more than 85 years, is among the homes of the early days of Jefferson. The W. Singleton home is one of Jefferson's oldest, and was originally known as the McFarland home. It is now owned and occupied by Mr. and Mrs. Benny Mosley. Mrs. Mosley is a granddaughter of the late W. Singleton Sr. What is now known as the Jefferson College was originally the B. H. Epperson home and was built in the early 70s. An interesting feature of this building is the stairway and the cupola on the 3rd floor with its specially treated colored glass windows by which water for bathing was heated by the rays of the sun.
Department of the Interior.
Washington, D.C. This is to certify that the historic building, known as William M. Freeman House, in the county of Marion and the state of Texas, has been selected by the Advisory Committee of the Historic American Building Survey as possessing exceptional historic or architectural interest and as being worthy of most careful preservation for the benefit of future generations, and that to this end a record of its present appearance and condition has been made and deposited for permanent reference in the Library of Congress. The above is a type likeness of a plaque received by Jesse de Ware of Jefferson, used here with his permission. A story of Old Jefferson is incomplete without mention of the old Freeman home. This page is explanatory except that it does not have the official seal of the Department of Interior which is on the plaque. Schools. Numerous educational institutions had advertisements in the 1871 directory, among them the following: English and German Select School in the Pativo Academy on Benner Street. Principal, Professor A. Rosenspitz. Third, Mary's School, Corner Market and Henderson Streets. Teachers, Sisters of Charity. Collegiate Institute, for male and female, Corner Broadway and Alley Streets. Principal, Professor J. T. S. Parks. Vice Principal, Professor M. Parks. School for Boys and Girls on Freeview Street, of which Professors P. Calhoun and G. A. Calhoun were principals. Christchurch School for Girls. Rev. E. T. Benner's rector. Mrs. Kirkpatrick and Mrs. Simmons were teachers. Other teachers of an early day were Prof. Draper, Mr. Foster, Mr. Jess Benton, Mr. Pickens, a red-whiskered Irishman, and Miss Mahala Halloway, who taught in the basement of the old Methodist church. Mr. Sam Ward organized the Paradise Academy near Jefferson in 1867. Paul Bass taught a mixed school in the old courthouse, now the colored school. Mr. R. W. Vinson and wife taught a private school, and later, when the public school was established, Mrs. Vinson became one of the charter teachers. A few years ago she voluntarily resigned, but she is still deeply interested on all educational subjects. Prof. Looney was one of the early day teachers, as was Miss Maggie Godfrey and Mrs. Willard Owens. Miss Mary Boise taught a girls' school with Mrs. Maggie Preston as assistant. The Jefferson Institute was another early day school of which Miss Ellie Norwood was principal. A public school was established in Jefferson in 1888 or 89 with Cole Bass as the first superintendent. Mr. R. W. Vinson was the first county superintendent, and Miss Alice Emmett was the second. Prominent citizens of Jefferson in her early days. Many of the prominent men who had a part in the making of Texas were born and reared in the little historic town of Jefferson. Mrs. Anna Hardwick Pennybacker was living in Jefferson and wrote the greater part of her
History of Texas
while here. Her father, Dr. J. W. Hardwick, was pastor of the First Baptist Church in Jefferson. Paul D. W. Culberson. Paul Culberson was congressman from the 1st Congressional District for 22 years. He was one of the leading lawyers of the state, and was prominent in the famous Abe Rothschild case. He was the father of C. A. Culberson, who was born and reared in Jefferson and started his political career as county attorney of Marion County, and was later attorney general of the state, governor of Texas, and was elected to the Senate of the United States. He was known as senior senator for a number of years until his death. Rev. D. W. Culberson, the father of Cole. Culberson was one of the early pastors of the First Baptist Church of Jefferson. W. L. Crawford, a leading criminal lawyer of Texas. Upon leaving Jefferson, he moved to Dallas. Hector McKay. Hector McKay, born in Tennessee, came to Texas with his mother and family when very young, settled near Elysian Fields, where the family remained many years. The old McKay burying ground is there. He was a member of Hector's brigade during the Civil War, enlisting at Marshall. He attained the rank of captain. After the war, he practiced law in Marshall, where he was a law partner of Judge Mabry and later of W. T. Armistead. Captain McKay was one of the prominent lawyers of early days of Jefferson. Captain Moss. Captain Moss, the grandfather of Mrs. Sims of Jefferson, in 1836 operated and owned one of the finest steamboats on the river the Hempstead. He assisted Captain Shreve in blowing out the rafts to make Cyprus Bay navigable to Jefferson, and during the Mexican War he transported soldiers across the river into Texas. Mr. T. L. Lyon. Mr. T. L. Lyon, with his family, came to Jefferson during the summer of 1867. For many years Captain Lyon was a member of the firm, Mooring and Lyon, buying cotton and doing general mercantile business on Dallas Street. They commanded a wide scope of business in the palmy days of the city. Later in life business reverses came and he accepted a clerkship in the
Leslie 13.
a small freight packet which burned. After which Captain Lyon was clerk on the Alpha. Both boats were commanded by the late Captain Ben Bonham. Count Lyon continued his service on the Alpha for a number of years. He was a good citizen, a devout Christian and an active member of the Methodist Church until his death Nov. 28, 1908, leaving many friends to mourn his loss. A daughter, Mrs. T. L. Jones, occupied the old home which was bought at the time of her father's coming to Jefferson 6 to 9 years ago, until her death recently. Royal A. Ferris. Mr. Ferris was a leading lawyer of Dallas, Texas, and he too was reared in Jefferson. Nelson Phillips, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Texas, and a leading lawyer of the state, made his home in Dallas and was a product of Marion County, living near Jefferson. W. Harrison, a leading businessman and banker of F.T. Worth, Texas, for many years started his business career in Jefferson during the palmy days. The Bateman family, Kane, Andy, and Quincy. This prominent family in the business and social life of the early days of Jefferson branched out into the business world in Jefferson, and when Jefferson began to lose navigation, along with it, many of her population, the Bateman family moved west and were helpful in building F.T. Worth, Texas, in business and banking lines. In fact, Jefferson furnished many of the leading business and professional men who went west in the early days and built the state of Texas. Jefferson is truly the
Mother City
of the state of Texas, as it was the largest and most noted in the early 70s and gave to the balance of the state leading business and professional men to make
The Lone Star State.
Right. The old families, who were not so famous, but were the real stamina of the town down through the ages, when prosperity had passed on to other fields and living was hard, yet they lived on and kept the home fires burning until today Jefferson seems doomed to again come to be, and is known the state over as a promising oil center with prosperity again in view. These with many others have done much for Jefferson and Texas, so
Come to Texas.
and be sure you come to Jefferson. Banj. H. Epperson. Banj. H. Epperson was born in Mississippi in about 1828. He was educated in North Carolina and at Princeton University, New Jersey. He came to Texas and settled at Clarksville sometime in the 40s. He studied law, was admitted to the bar and practiced with marked ability and success. He was active Whig politician before and after the war and was the candidate of his party for governor in 1851 at a time when he was below the constitutional age. In 1852 he was at the head of the Texas delegation to the Whig National Convention. He served in the legislature practically from 1858 until his death. He was a personal friend of Sam Houston and was consulted by Houston on numerous affairs of state. In the controversy over secession, Epperson was a Union man, standing substantially with General Houston on that question. After Texas seceded, he cast his allegiance with the Confederacy and did a great deal for the cause, giving very liberally of his time and money. He was a member of the First Confederate Congress. In 1866 he was elected to the U.S. Congress and went to Washington, but as Texas was not recognized as a state, he was not permitted to take his seat. In the early 70s he moved to Jefferson, Texas, where he lived until his death in 1878. Because of his wide personal acquaintance and unusual ability, he exercised a wide political influence throughout the state. He was one of the first presidents of East Line Railroad and was highly instrumental in the railroad development of Texas. In 1930, won a collection of papers and letters that had belonged to B.H. Jefferson was sent to the University of Texas by his son. Among them were letters dealing with affairs in Texas during the Confederate War and Reconstruction periods, also Indian papers saved from the time that Mr. Jefferson had represented the Indians in Washington before, or in the early 50s, besides many papers pertaining to railway matters, etc. The archivist, Mrs. Mattie Austin Hatcher, has written that
they are very valuable.
He says that these things are used by historians and also by students in getting material for their thesis. W. H. Torrens. W. H. Torrens, born in Mobile, Alabama, in 1849, moved to Houston, Texas, and in 1850 came to Jefferson. He established a general mercantile business on Austin Street, in the building next to the present Goldberg Feed Store. In 1862 he was tax collector, but maintained his business also. In 1872 built the first brick block on Polk Street, where the Torrens Manufacturing Company is now located. The W. H. Torrens home at one time stood in the middle of this block, made into an office building and used by Dr. A. V. Plotton. Mr. Torrens bought a home on the corner of Lafayette and Market Streets, which is standing and in good repair. The Torrens business has run continuously all these years and is known as the Torrens Manufacturing Company, a very flourishing business, owned and operated by T. L. Torrens, who is one of Jefferson's most prominent and active citizens, and a son of W. H. Torrens. Mr. P. L. Torrens married Miss Elizabeth Schluter, daughter of the late Mr. and Mrs. Louis Schluter, who was a very prominent lawyer in the city. Tom Lee Torrens, Jr., son of Mr. Torrens, is now active manager of the store. Mrs. Kelly Spearman and Louis Torrens are also children of Mr. and Mrs. Tom Torrens. Story from past recalls worth of two Jefferson men, Captain DeWare Cole H. McKay, have sons prominent here now.
Before the final adjournment of District Court and during a short recess Saturday evening, at Jefferson, the friends of Sheriff J. L. DeWare of Marion County presented him with a Smith & Wesson 4-4 caliber pistol and belt. The weapon was elaborately carved, pearl-handled, inlaid with gold, and bore this inscription: J. L. DeWare, Sheriff, Jefferson, Texas. From his friends Jan. 1887. A graceful and appropriate presentation speech was delivered by Cole McKay.
Taken from the
Dallas and Texas 50 years ago.
Column in the Dallas News on Jan. 25. The story above was sent to Jefferson Journal by L.E.B. Webb, Texas, and Pacific official, with the notation that
it seems to me will be of interest to many in Jefferson.
Mr. Webb was right. As he goes on to explain, Sheriff J. L. DeWare, or Captain DeWare, as he was more generally known, was the father of J. L. DeWare, present local agent for the Texas and Pacific in Jefferson, and the Cole H. McKay mentioned was the father of Arch McKay, now tax assessor collector. Both were men who stood out as leaders in their time. Both they and their descendants have many friends in Jefferson. James Jackson Rives. James Jackson Rives came to Jefferson from Caddo Parish, before the Civil War, and established a cotton and hide business after returning from the war. When his son, Herbert Rives, returned from Suwanee Military Institute, he joined the business of J. Rives and Son, which continued until the warehouse was destroyed by fire about 1902. Baloff, merchant and banker. Rudolf Baloff was born in Hamburg, Germany, June 30, 1832. At the age of 16 years he sought his fortune in America. Arriving at New Orleans, there he obtained employment. Later he obtained a position with the Maori steamship lines and gradually worked up to the position as interpreter. He was serving in this capacity when the war between the states was declared and he joined the Confederate Army. He was married in 1866 to Miss Mary Louise Huttinger of New Orleans. To this union 7 children were born: Lula Mrs. D. P. Alvarez, Julie de Mrs. S.A. Ramsey, Mamie Mrs. I. L. Goldberg, Corinne, George Henry, Emma Mrs. Eugene Mayer and Fred W. Mr. Baloff came to Jefferson in 1867, he and his wife making the trip by boat. He opened a general merchandise in the corner of Marshall and Austin Streets, later moving to Walnut and Lafayette and later to Austin Street. The G. A. Selly foundry of Sellerville was purchased by Mr. Baloff, and the material used for all manufactured articles was secured in Marion County. Mr. Baloff operated the foundry until 1895. His mercantile business was later devoted entirely to hardware and nail machinery. Along with Mr. Baloff's mercantile business, a private bank was opened in 1885 and operated as
R. Baloff & Co.
The bank was operated in the office of the store by his 3 daughters, Lula, Julia and Mamie. Mr. Baloff sold his business to his son Fred and his son-in-law Eugene Mayer in 1897. The banking business was discontinued and Mr. Baloff retired from business, having spent 30 years without a failure, assignment or compromise with creditors. He was an active member of the General Dick Taylor Confederate camp. Mr. Baloff died in 1910. The business established by him has continued through these 69 years and is today successfully operated by his grandchildren under the name of Eugene Mayer and Son. Robert Potter. March 3, 1843. Senator Robert Potter, a signer of the Texas Declaration of Independence and first Secretary of the Navy of the Republic, was murdered at his home on Caddo Lake. He was born in Gainesville, North Carolina, in 1800. Served in the U.S. Navy from 1815 to 1817. Then he returned home and studied law, and in 1826 he moved to Halifax and practiced law. He served in the legislature in North Carolina, was elected to the House of Representatives of the 21st United States Congress as a Jackson Democrat. His course was brilliant and improving. His brilliancy, connected with the fact that he had been a midshipman, led to his appointment in the cabinet of President Burnett as the first Secretary of the Navy of the Republic. He was expelled from the House of Representatives of the Legislature of North Carolina for cheating at cards. Potter later moved to a place 25 miles northeast of Jefferson, Texas, now known as Potter's Point. A feud arose between Potter and a Captain William Pitney Rose, who was known as the
Lion of the Lakes.
The feud arising from the claims that Potter had prevailed upon President Lamar to offer a reward for Rose. The widow of Rose's brother settled on a league of land claimed by Potter. This was intensified when Rose espoused the candidacy of John B. Denton, who was defeated for a seat in the Senate by Potter. Potter, who lived on a bluff overlooking Caddo Lake, organized a posse of about 25 men, surrounded the home of Rose with the intention of capturing, chastising and probably killing Rose. Rose was nearby with some slaves clearing a woodland, and when he saw Potter's men, he lay upon the ground while one of his slaves,
Uncle Jerry,
piled brush over him and effectually concealed him from view. Foiled in their purpose, the posse returned and were followed, at a safe distance, by Preston Rose, a son of Captain Rose, who saw them disband and most of them going to Smithland, while 9 went with Potter to his home. That night Rose secured
warrant for trespass
against Potter. This was placed in the hands of a constable, who summoned a posse, consisting of Rose, Preston Rose, J.W. Scott and 13 others to execute the warrant, as if a warrant for trespass required.
The body to be taken.
They reached Potter's home at midnight and surrounded it. At daybreak the bodyguard of Potter began to reconnoitre the premises, when Hezekiah George came suddenly upon Captain Rose. Upon being commanded to surrender, he turned for flight and gave the alarm. Rose fired both barrels of his shotgun at him, and although he survived the wounds, he was ever afterwards known as
Old Rose's lead mine.
Potter became alarmed and ran about 100 yards to the lake. Being an excellent diver, he plunged into the water and disappeared from sight, but when he came up for air, John W. Scott killed him. He was buried on Potter's Point. Rogers National Bank. Captain T. J. Rogers, founder of the Rogers National Bank of Jefferson and one of Jefferson's oldest citizens, was born in 1832 in Hinds County, Mississippi. In 1849 he came to Texas with his father and family. In 1856 in Gilmer, Texas, he married Emily Mabry and they moved to Jefferson, living in what is now known as the Brewer home, with a family of Dr. Louis J. Terry. During the Civil War, he served in the Confederate Army in General Ochiltree's regiment, the 18th in General Wall's division, as a lieutenant, later being made captain, after Captain John Koch, brother-in-law, was killed in the Battle of Mansfield. After the war he returned to Jefferson, again engaging in the mercantile business. In 1868 he went into business for himself. He was identified with the material, civic and religious interests of Jefferson. He was one of the promoters of the East Line and Red River Railroad, later a branch of the M.K.T. Railroad of Texas. He was secretary and treasurer of this railroad until it was sold to the M.K.T. He was also principal owner of the Jefferson Cotton Oil Mill, later selling his interest to the Jefferson Cotton Oil Company, which operated until it was burned in 1903. In 1896 the banking business T. J. Rogers & Son was founded in connection with the mercantile business, which was now under the name T. J. Rogers & Son, Ben Rogers. In 1940, J. Rogers & Son Bankers was nationalized, becoming the Rogers National Bank of Jefferson, with T. J. Rogers president and B. F. Rogers active vice president. In 1904 Herbert A. Spellings was elected cashier, which position he held until 1918, when he succeeded to the presidency by reason of the death of Capt. P. J. Rogers. In the meantime B. F. Rogers, vice president, had withdrawn active participation in the bank's management. Shortly after Mr. Spellings became president, the bank became one of the honor banks of the United States and maintained this position to the present time, and throughout the most depressing period the banks have ever faced, the Rogers National Bank of Jefferson under Mr. Spellings' guidance maintained more than its legal reserve, willingly met the demands made upon his bank, and was never embarrassed to the least extent. When the national moratorium was declared and conservators were being appointed for the safety management of national banks, it was freely stated that the Rogers National Bank had had a conservator for many years in the person of Mr. Spellings. Therefore the government would not be called upon to appoint one for that bank, and this bank was one of the first in the United States to reopen without a special examination. Mr. Spellings remained as president until the summer of 1935, when he was removed by death and was succeeded by Mr. Rogers Rainey as president. Mr. Rainey being a grandson of Capt. P. J. Rogers and nephew of Ben F. Rogers, the founder of the bank, which is the only bank in Marion County and an outstanding one in the state of Texas. Only one bank in 5 can qualify for this honor. What is a
Roll of honor?
Bank, and what does it mean to you as a depositor, or as a possible depositor, that this institution has been given that rating in the banking
Hall of Fame?
A
Roll of honor?
Bank is a bank that has voluntarily provided double protection for its depositors by building up its surplus and undivided profits account to a point where this reserve fund is equal to, or greater than, the capital of the bank. The laws, either national or state, do not require any bank to provide this
extra measure of safety.
As a matter of fact, the soundest banking practice and the legal requirements of some states fix 20% of the bank's capital as a sufficient reserve fund to maintain for the safety of its depositors. But before a bank can become known as a
Roll of honor.
bank, it must voluntarily build up a surplus reserve fund to an amount at least 5 times the usual requirements. So severe are the requirements that only one bank in 5 in the entire country can qualify as a
Roll of honor.
institution. The fact that this bank has achieved this distinction stamps it as one of the strongest institutions for its size in the whole United States. You can see, therefore, that it does mean a great deal to you as a depositor or as a possible depositor, that this is a
Roll of honor.
bank. In addition to giving you
More than the law requires.
in protection, we are only striving to give you a
double measure
of courteous and friendly service. David Browning Culberson. David Browning Culberson was born in Troup County, Georgia, Sept. 24th, 1830, was educated at Brownwood, Land Grange, Carr, and studied law under Chief Justice Chilton of Alabama. He was married to Miss Eugenia Kimball, a lady of sterling character and brilliant mind. It was to her influence and encouragement that he owed a large measure of his success. To this union 3 children were born. Charles, the oldest, was 1 year old when the family moved to Texas in 1856. Robert Owen and a daughter, Anna, were born in Texas. Robert Owen is the only surviving one. He now resides in Houston, Texas. The Culberson family, Jim Culberson, a brother with his family, and Dr. R. L. Rowell and family, and others, and a large company of slaves came to Texas in covered wagons. Dr. Rowell located in Jefferson, but the Culberson brothers moved to Gilmer, Texas, where they practiced law for 2 years, then came to Jefferson to make their home. Col. D. W. Culberson was elected to the state legislature in 1859, was elected again in 1864. He was then elected to the 44th Congress and served continuously until his death. From a private in the Confederate Army, he was promoted to the rank of Colonel of the 18th Texas Infantry, was assigned to duty in 1864 as Adjutant General, with rank of Colonel. Although a nationally known lawyer of shrewd and brilliant mind, he remained always unassuming, almost careless in his dress. In manner he was shy and retiring. He spoke so seldom in Congress that he was known as
the silent member.
His brilliant mind, sterling qualities of character won for him the title of
Honest Dave.
He was one of the lawyers in the famous de Beaumont Besser Rothschild case. The Rev. D. W. Culberson, Sr., the father of Col. Culberson, was one of the early pastors of the First Baptist Church of Jefferson. Clubs. The 1881 Club. The 1881 Club was organized in Jefferson, Texas in October 1881 at the home of Mrs. W. W. Ward, where a room full of enthusiastic members organized a Chautauqua Circle. Among the charter members were Mrs. J. H. Gomez, Mrs. J. H. Russell, Mrs. Sally Dixon, and Miss Sarah Terhune. The circle was composed of both men and women and met at night. Captain J. H. Russell was the first president, with Ben Epson as secretary. At the end of 4 years, diplomas and credits were given. Without a break in the meetings, the Chautauqua Circle was merged into a woman's club, called the Review Club, lessons being taken from current magazines, then known as the Shakespearean Club, for several years. Finally, in 1882, when it became a member of the State and 3rd District Federation, the name was changed to
the 1881 Club,
in honor of the year of its organization. Many have been the courses of study by the enthusiastic members. In 55 years of its existence, the club meetings have continued each week, only disbanding from second Saturday in May to the first Saturday in October. One of the charter members, Mrs. Sarah Terhune Taylor, is now an honorary member. One of the active members, Mrs. D. C. Wise, dates her membership to 1896. This club has the distinction of being the oldest club in the state of Texas. The Wednesday Music Club. The Wednesday Music Club is one of the oldest music clubs in the state, having been organized in 1909 by the late Mrs. W. H. Mason, for the purpose of study and to assist the 1881 Club in putting on a program when the 1881 Club entertained the 3rd District Federation of Women's Clubs in 1910. The music club requested membership in the Federation at this meeting and was a member of the Federation of Women's Clubs until the music club began a separate organization. The first choruses
Carmen.
L.
In Old Madrid.
Were presented at the district meeting of Federated Women's Clubs. The Wednesday Music Club was a member of the East Texas Music Festival during its 7 years of existence and of the Maybelle Hale Symphony Orchestra. As co-hostess, entertained the festival in May 1924. Mrs. H. A. Spellings was president of the East Texas Festival at this time, also president of the Wednesday Music Club, serving the club in this capacity for 14 years. Mrs. T. Haggard was the club president last year, and she and Mrs. Murph Smith DeWare are the only members who have served the club uninterruptedly from its beginning. The club had the honor and pleasure of taking part in the wedding of one of its members, Miss Ethel Leaf, to Mr. J. L. DeWare by rendering
Lohengrin's Wedding March.
This really was a
Few
years back, but a happy memory to those present on such a joyous occasion. Marion County. Possibly few counties have the distinction of having been a part of so many other counties as is Marion County, so no wonder she is so
tiny
in size after having been sliced and served to 6 different others. The records at Austin, Texas tell us that Marion County was first a part of Red River County, later a part of Shelby, Bowie, Titus, Cass and Harrison. Cass County was for 10 years known as Davis County, thus again taking the name of Cass, so really another
slice
may have been taken off Marion. However, it is up to Harrison for being the
Big-hearted
county. Years ago, a Negro representative was sent to the legislature from Harrison County, and during his term of office Marion County acquired a nice acreage of Harrison County, and when the Negro representative returned to Marshall he was asked,
"Why in the mischief did you allow anything like that to happen?"
He replied,
"Well, sir, Senator Cobson just talked me right out of that little piece of land."
Marion County today has an abundant supply of high-grade iron ore sawmills, chair factory, an abundant supply of the purest and best artesian water to be found anywhere. The county is well adapted to the raising of hogs and cattle. The most delicious sweet potatoes, fruit and berries of all kinds. Mayhaws grow wild, and from these is made a most palatable and beautiful jelly. In fact, almost anything will do well in Marion County. There are many kinds of clover growing wild. Stern Memorial Fountain. Stern Memorial Fountain was given to the city of Jefferson by the children Eva, Leopold, Alfred and Fred of Jacob and Ernestine Stern in 1913. In the gift of this splendid piece of work lay the lifetime love of Jefferson, a devotion of a little immigrant girl grown to womanhood, and the gratitude of her children to a little city that had given mother and father happiness. The fountain is entirely of purest bronze and is 1,312 feet high, with bowls of 712 feet broad, and has a statue 6 feet tall representing
education.
The total cost being $4,000. Engraved on the fountain is
dedicated in honor of Jacob and Ernestine Stern, who lived in Jefferson for many years.
Presented to the city of Jefferson by their children as an expression of affection for their native town.
More than 76 years ago, Mr. and Mrs. Stern came to Jefferson from Houston in a 2-horse wagon. Mr. Stern was buried in Jefferson in 1872, and later the family went to New York to live. The fountain is still used, as was originally intended, for the good of man, stock and dogs, and the pure water that flows through it was given the ladies of Jefferson by the late W. Ward in appreciation for work done in the Prohibition election many years ago. As the people of Jefferson appreciated the noble qualities of the Stern family, they too appreciate the gift of love from the children. In connection with the foregoing article, a little book has been written by Mr. Stern's sister-in-law, Mrs. Eva Stern, a most beautiful token of the noble lives of Mr. and Mrs. Stern. In the book is printed a bill of sale for a Negro woman slave. When Mr. Stern gave the bill of sale to his wife, he said,
"I felt like a mean creature when I paid the money for that girl, but I knew that we needed a nurse girl."
So what was to be done?
Where I was born, on the Rhine, no one would believe for a moment that I would buy a human being.
They would hate me, as I hate myself, for bartering in human flesh.
The exact bill of sales for Sarah read as follows:
Received from Jacob Stern $2,000 for a Negro woman, by name Sarah, about 34 years of age, copper-colored. Said woman I promise to deliver to Jacob Stern in course of 6 days.
I hereby guarantee the woman, Sarah, to be sound in body and mind.
I also guarantee said woman, Sarah, to be a good housewoman. If not, I promise to take her back and refund to said Jacob Stern $1,000.
Just before Mr. Stern's death, their old servant,
Aunt Caroline,
and he were talking, and he told her that he thanked God he had set the colored people free, and she replied,
"But thanks be to him, Mawson, for jibing me my good massa and missus, who give me my clothes, my victuals, and my medicine."
Walnut Grove. 5 miles south of Linden there stands today an immense walnut grove. Planted on both sides of this old dirt road, 100 or more of these trees are all that are left of the 320 planted by Mr. Jim Lockett more than 60 years ago. The trees make a dense shade and a beautiful lane. The story is that Mr. Lockett, in a reminiscent mood, thought that the country someday would run out of split rails with which to make fences. Realizing that wire would someday be used for making fences, he knew that fence posts would be needed, so he ordered his farm hands to plant in every other corner of the rail fence a slim seedling walnut tree to be used for future fence posts. They are standing today waiting for the wire, and we are told that when the new highway was built that it was moved over 200 feet to keep from injuring the roots of Mr. Lockett's trees. Mr. Lockett passed away more than 20 years ago, but his walnut line is still a joy to the many who pass that way, and many people gather the walnuts by the bushel each fall. Another interesting thing that Mr. Lockett had on his farm was his water gin. One of the neighbors said
that in its day it could really go after the cotton.
The water was brought to the gin through a series of ditches and water troughs 1.25 miles long. From overhead and controlled by a gate, the water fell onto the top of a large wooden wheel 36 feet in diameter. Around the wheel were attached buckets holding 15 gallons of water each, and when enough buckets were filled with water, the wheel began turning and the gin ran.
She would launch out 5 bales a day if you got going by daylight.
Murder Alley.
Murder Alley
May be reached by taking the left where Line Street divides, going south to the river, leaving the Barbie home on the right. The name
Murder Alley
was derived from the fact that 1 and often 2 dead bodies would be found each morning in this alley. Paul Lowry is said to have edited a paper in the Barbie home during these much trying days. It may be of interest to many Jeffersonians to know that the original courthouse was, according to the Allen Urquhart plan, located just in front of the P. T. Henderson home. The story of Diamond Bessie. This sketch of a famous murder case in Jefferson is mostly from the pen of W. H. Ward, who lived at that time and later moved to Texarkana, where he was editor of
The 20th Century.
And this sketch is taken from the December issue, along with a few other legends from other sources. The recent mysterious murder of a woman in Jefferson, Texas, recalls the death of Bessie Moore,
Diamond Bessie,
who was believed to have been slain by her husband and erstwhile paramour, Abe Rothschild, within rifle shot of where the murder was committed more than 20 years ago. The murder of Bessie Moore, properly Bessie Rothschild, a young and beautiful woman who had won the sobriquet of Diamond Bessie by the number and splendor of her jewels, was one of the most startling and sensational crimes in the criminal history of Texas. The scene of the crime was visited by thousands of curious spectators, and the entire press of the Southwest teemed with gruesome incidents of the awful crime. Crowds came from afar to view the spot where the young mother had been hurled into eternity without warning, carrying with her the half-formed life of an unborn infant. On the shiny slope of a southern hillside, almost within call of the then thriving popular city of Jefferson, Texas, in the calm of a Sabbath afternoon, the cruel and cowardly crime was committed, for which the husband was twice sentenced to hang but escaped justice by a technicality of the law. The murder of Bessie Rothschild, by the man who was first her betrayer and then her husband, was a crime so weird and terrible that the hand of a master might make it immortal, without for one instant diverging from the strict line of truth into the realm of romance. 24 years ago, Bessie Moore, the daughter of respectable parents of moderate circumstances, was decoyed from her home in the country by the son of a wealthy Cincinnati family. With the inexperience of youth, and that blind faith which makes a woman follow the man she loves to the utmost ends of the earth, Bessie Moore followed Abe Rothschild to Cincinnati. There for 1 year the young girl was plunged into that maelstrom of sin which whirls and eddies about a great city. Her companions were those of the half-world, the submerged half. Rothschild was rich, and he showered his wealth upon the girl from whom he had taken all that life holds dear, home, family, and friends. The motley population of Jefferson added color to the restless movement of the town. The streets were crowded with men of many kinds of dress, cowboys in chaps and spurs, gentlemen in morning coats with canes, farmers in dingy overalls, ladies in elaborate flowing gowns, old slavery Negroes, self-confident northern Negroes, carpetbaggers, and into the crowd came Bessie Moore, sparkling with diamonds, accompanied by dark and tall Abe Rothschild, and did she create a sensation? She was part of this restless life the 3 short days that she was among them. Diamonds sparkled in her ears as she shook her head and laughed, diamonds so large on her fingers that it seemed they must tire her small hands. This poor return for her sacrifice satisfied the girl only for a time, then the glittering jewels, silken raiment, which gave her the sobriquet of
Diamond Bessie,
and which were purchased with a woman's shame, began to pall upon her. Bessie Moore was to become a mother. Amid all the dissipation into which her betrayer had thrust her, the woman had remained true and steadfast to the man she loved, for whom she had given up her innocence and home. Through all this time she had relied upon Rothschild's promise to make her his wife, and she prayed that the promise might be fulfilled. Finding her prayers of no avail, she demanded a fulfillment of the pledge. There was a scene, of course, and other scenes followed, but Rothschild had now to deal, not with a silly trusting girl, but with a wronged, outraged and desperate woman, who battled not only for her rights but for her child, yet unborn. In a fit of desperation she threatened to lay the shameful story of her betrayal before Rothschild's father, a wealthy and influential citizen of Cincinnati. Then Rothschild is alleged to have conceived and proceeded to carry out a crime so dark, so despicable and so diabolical that Satan himself must have blushed at its conception. He promised the young girl to make her his wife, told her that it would not do for them to be married in Cincinnati, where both themselves and their intimacy were so well known, but that he would take her on his western trips. Rothschild was a traveling salesman representing a jewelry house in which his father was financially interested and he himself being slated for partnership, and that they would be married in some out-of-the-way place out west, and that by changing one figure in the marriage certificate, it would make it appear that they had been married immediately upon the young girl leaving home, which would have given legitimate birth to the child, to which Bessie Moore was about to become a mother. The girl believed him and blessed him, and they left Cincinnati together, traveling westward and passing through Texarkana. From the moment Rothschild promised to make Bessie Moore his wife, he had been planning the woman's murder. They left the Texas and Pacific Railway at Kildare, Rothschild telling the woman that they would go through Linden, the county seat of Cass County, to be married, choosing that spot, he said, because it was so obscure that news of the marriage would not be heard outside the little town in which the ceremony was to be performed. His real intention was to murder the woman on the road. He was thwarted in this by being compelled to make the trip on a public coach, there being no such thing as private conveyances in Kildare. Once at Linden, Rothschild was compelled to make good his promise, and Bessie Moore, the wronged and betrayed girl, became Bessie Rothschild, the wife of her betrayer. From Linden they came to Jefferson, Texas, from which point it was agreed that Mrs. Rothschild should return to Cincinnati and have her marriage certificate recorded, changing the date, as agreed upon, after which she was to return to her husband. The poor girl looked forward with eagerness and hunger to the day she would return to her home bearing the honored name of wife and be clasped once more in her mother's arms. Alas! The poor girl lies in an obscure corner of the Jefferson Cemetery, her body long since dust and food for worms. They reached Jefferson and registered at the Brooks home, now the foster home. From some cause she appeared unhappy, and one of the maids of the hotel, who entered the room several times during the afternoon, declared she found Bessie weeping bitterly, but the next morning she seemed to have recovered her cheerfulness and gave the maid a handsome present, telling her that she and her husband had not been very happy for some time past, but that they were entirely reconciled and were going out in the woods to spend the day. Lunch was prepared for them at the hotel. They were seen by 20 people to cross the public bridge over Cypress Bayou, within 100 yards of the business portion of the city. The writer himself, returning from a ride, met them within 100 yards of the bridge and noticed them only sufficiently to note that they were strangers, fashionably dressed, and that the woman was very beautiful. The couple strolled leisurely along for half a mile on the other side of the bridge, then taking a bypath plunged into the forest, climbed a hill, almost within stone's throw of the public thoroughfare, and within rifle shot of the city itself. They had their lunch, and doubtless the man who planned one of the most cowardly murders ever perpetrated whispered words of love and loyalty into the ears of the poor woman, only too glad to receive them. Their lunch was spread on a large rock. It was almost an ideal spot, deep in the heart of the woodland, surrounded by the songs of birds and the musical ripple of the running water. In the shade of the giant oak and ironwood they whiled away the midday hours. Seated on the moss-grown rock, the woman at the initials of her husband in the soft bark of a curly maple, and with a fond woman's foolish heart treasured the false vows of her brutal lord, in whose inhuman breast lurked a purpose so dark, so deadly, that the fiends of hell must have shuddered at its import. While the foolish heart of the woman fluttered with hope and thrilled with fond desires, the hand of the master murderer of modern times pushed the rim of a deadly revolver within an inch of her white temple, where rippling masses of sunny hair fell in clustering curls, and without a tremor sent a bullet crashing through her brain. The sound of a shot rang out on the evening air, reverberated from the hillside, and died away in distant woods. The birds stopped midway their gladsome song. A tiny serpent of smoke rose above the tree-tops and drifted with the winds. A frightened squirrel darted into its den. The sluggish river flowed smoothly at the base of the hill, and a dead white face stared at the winter sky. With fiendish deliberation the Oxford removed the costly jewels from the dead form. With one hand the murderer of Bessie Rothschild hurled a hopeless woman's soul into eternity, and with the other stripped her lifeless body of the poor gaudy ornaments, which were badges of her shame, the price of a woman's sin. Rothschild returned to the city by a different route, employing a Negro boatman to put him over the river. On his return to the hotel he explained that he left his wife with friends in the country. He left Jefferson the next day, and it was not until a week or more that the body was discovered, within 100 yards of what is known as the Shreveport Road, a public highway traveled by hundreds of people daily. The corpse lay for all this time untouched by animals of the forest and unclean birds of the air. Rothschild was traced to Cincinnati, and only a few days intervened before the sheriff of Jefferson, Mr. John Vines, located him in a saloon and brought him back to Texas. Finding himself surrounded by detectives, fearing every bush and officer, cowering neath the lash of an accusing conscience, the murderer of Bessie Moore, with the same pistol, which had sent his hapless victim to her last account, attempted to end his own miserable existence. Again the pistol was pointed at the temple of human life, but the hand of a suicide was not as steady as that of a murderer. Rothschild lost an eye while Bessie lost her life. For 7 years Abe Rothschild battled for his life with the help of the South's best legal talent against the state's attorneys who accused him of killing Bessie Moore. After one of the most sensational murder trials in the history of Texas, after being twice convicted and sentenced to hang, Rothschild escaped justice through a technicality of the law. The story goes that when the verdict of the jury was given, the foreman of the jury drew a crude picture of a noose on the wall of the courthouse and said,
"This is my verdict."
The lawyers who defended Abe Rothschild were Mabry, Pierce, McKay, and Culberson and Armistead, Crawford and Crawford, Turner and Lipscomb, and it is also said that their fees were princely. W. P. Armistead of the firm of Culberson and Armistead cleared Rothschild. People came from miles. Resentment was strong, and for days the battle raged. Strangers recognized Rothschild as the same handsome stranger who had spent 2 days at the Capitol Hotel in Marshall under the name of Abe Rothschild. The courthouse where Abe Rothschild was twice tried for the murder of beautiful Bessie Moore is now used for the Negro school, and the jail in which he attempted to take his life has long since been torn away. Rothschild later served a 20-year sentence in a southern penitentiary for a gigantic system of theft and forgery directed against the Pacific Express Company, with a sufficient number of charges pending against him in other states to send him to his grave in stripes, though he lived 3 times the time allotted to man. This ends the story and history of
Diamond Bessie,
which startled the world a score of years ago, with details of which many people in this community are familiar. Only a small stone marked the humble-looking grave, and it is told by the sexton that it was donated by a marble yard that formerly did business here. Her name was written in indelible ink and long since has faded away. After she had been buried many years, a stranger came into the cemetery and asked to be shown her grave. His visit was an occasion of heartbreaking sobs and bitter tears. He left as he came in an unbroken silence as to who he was, or from whence he came. The body of this beautiful girl was placed in a casket that was bought by the big-hearted citizenship of Jefferson, costing $150. Just beyond the wagon bridge, on the road leading to Marshall and Shreveport, her heart was pierced by a cruel bullet from a hand she loved. His only defense was an
alibi.
A change of venue was tried, finally in Jefferson, and at the verdict,
"Not guilty."
the most awful frown of displeasure was seen on the face of the judge. The name of this girl was Bessie Moore. 3.
Citizens
Of Jefferson.
and Viney.
There were 3 citizens of Jefferson who were not so prominent, but they were well known and will be remembered by the
Children
of 40 and 50 years ago. First, we would remind you of
Aunt Viney.
Surely there was never another just like her. She was a real African, large of stature, black, kinky-headed, and had a style all her own. She modelled her robes of
Toe sacks.
often making them many layers thick, according to the weather. Sometimes her robes were long, and again they reached the shins. She
earned
her living by begging from house to house, and when the weather was extremely cold she often sought shelter for the night on the back porches that were not securely locked. She was never in a hurry to leave, and was often aroused by the owner stumbling over her when he came out. She was never known to steal, and rarely displayed her temper. She had little to say to anyone, but she wielded her long heavy walking stick in a professional manner when the children tormented her, and they were not long in retreating.
Aunt Marizo.
Another well-known character was
Aunt Marizo.
She was entirely different from Aunt Viney in appearance and manner. She was tall and slender, and wore her dresses trailing in the dust. She would stand for hours on the street shaking her skirts and speaking fluently to an imaginary audience. She was perfectly harmless unless tormented by the boys who thought it rare fun to tease her.
Sugar Boy.
Sugar Boy was the son of an adopted daughter of Dr. and Mrs. Walker, a highly respected couple who lived in Jefferson more than 50 years ago. Barry Benefield, the son of our own Mr. and Mrs. D. Benefield, who is a writer of great note, has mentioned
Sugar Boy.
in his books, but he did not tell you that the real
Sugar Boy
was red-headed, freckled, and always dirty. He had a better mind than many gave him credit for having. He was always ready to play, but when he grew tired he made it hard for the smaller children, while the older boys sent him home in a trot and weeping. He thoroughly enjoyed snooping around at night to peep in and see what was going on in the neighborhood and to play
tic-tac.
He passed away many years ago, leaving only one sister who is living in California. Even though he had a home, he liked to take his plate and push it between the palings to the children in the neighborhood to be served to lunch. Everyone was most generous and kind to him. Jimplicute. 60 years of service, with one idea to upbuild Jefferson and Marion County. The Jefferson Jimplicute was first issued as a weekly, then semi-weekly, daily, then again as a weekly. It never lost an opportunity to advocate every proposed plan that had in it anything that would put Jefferson or Marion County to the front. The Jefferson Daily Jimplicute, founded in 1865 by Col. Ward Taylor, is the only one of 23 newspapers published at one time or another in Jefferson to endure until the present. Did you ever stop to think that the name Jimplicute carries with it more meaning than any other name now in use? Ignorance of this fact has made many think that it meant nothing and was therefore without significance. This demonstrates the fact that nothing should be cast aside without a thorough investigation, and we are publishing here, in its entirety, an article written by the late Judge W. P. Atkins of Jefferson, giving to you the various important words that mean much, that go to make up the one word Jimplicute. What is there in a name? The following is the last explanation of the word Jimplicute, and it is reproduced for this issue. Since the compilation of the word Jimplicute, the curious, the thoughtless, and thoughtful, the learned and the unlearned have been curious to know the significance of the word. The linguists of renown have failed to find any trace of the word in any of the live or dead languages. We have at last decided to place before our readers the origin of the word, and let those who have characterized the name as being meaningless see how far wrong they were. We doubt if there is a name carried in the entire newspaper fraternity that has more significance than the Jimplicute. It is the friend of all the elements that build up the country. It is absolutely free from politics. It is a friend of labor, likewise capital. It advocates industry, and greatest of all, it advocates friendship and unity between every interest. When properly written out, the Jimplicute reads as follows:
Join industry, manufacturing, planting, labor, energy, capital in unity together everlastingly.
Jimplicute has seen 23 fail. We leave with pride and satisfaction the explanation of the word which has so long been slandered as being meaningless, unpronounceable, and such complimentary econiums. To all such the Jimplicute sends greetings, and in the kindest of spirits says,
That he who laughs last laughs best.
While perhaps
a rose would smell as sweet by any other name,
yet there is no name that we are familiar with that carries with it so much promise, so much significance, such hope, as that grandest of words, the Jimplicute. The Jimplicute was established in 1865 by Ward Taylor, Jr., who died in 1894, and his son and daughter, M.I. Taylor, known to her many friends as
Miss Birdie,
conducted the paper jointly until 1915, when Miss Taylor took entire control and conducted the paper until it was sold in 1926. Miss Taylor retained the job printing department, which she continues managing, and doing the entire work herself these 10 years since.
Miss Birdie
is loved by her friends, and many strangers passing this way drop in to see her. She is ever ready to lend a helping hand to anyone in need and to any project for the betterment of her hometown. She recalls many of Jefferson's earlier days when it was a real city, and by her much of the past history of our little city has been preserved. She recalls the big fire of 1866 even though she was quite young. She says that she and her family were living at the Irvine Hotel, now the Excelsior, and had their clothes and articles that they specially desired to save tied in bundles, so that they might escape in case the hotel burned. Caddo Lake. The same shaking up of the earth that made Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee caused the sinking of the ground and formation of Caddo Lake with its connecting chain of lakes and Cypress Bay in Marion County. A dam of logs, the accumulation of years, piled up in Red River, backing the water up into the lake and bayou so as to make them navigable by the largest steamboats. The fine sandy land adjacent to these lakes produced excellent crops of cotton of the finest grade, and the planters of the Old South had long before the war thrown it into a series of plantations of 5,000 acres or more. Caddo Lake is said to be the most mysterious body of water in Texas. Tourists and campers always find something delightfully unique about the lake. The lake proper is 20 miles long and 16 miles wide. More than 400 oil derricks dot the surface of the lake with a network of pipelines underlying its surface. Mechanics and other employees go from well to well by motorboat. The greater part of Caddo Lake lies in Marion County, Texas, with the remainder being in Harrison County and Caddo Parish, La. When the first white settlers came to this locality, the Indians told them that the lake was formed overnight in 1812 by some kind of volcanic eruption. Many Indians were said to have lost their lives in upheaval. The lake is fed by the waters of Cypress Bayou, and in former times most of eastern Texas transportation was carried on by way of the Mississippi, Red, and Cypress rivers in Caddo Lake. The federal government has made several cuts, or ditches as they are known, for the purpose of straightening the channel, and in these cuts are found many fish as well as some alligators. Catfish weighing more than 50 pounds have been taken from the stream. Many clubhouses have been built along the shores of the lake and its tributaries, among them the Dallas, the Caddo, Port Caddo, Greenville, Jefferson, Atlanta, Mayors, Terry, and many others, both private and commercial. Oakwood Cemetery. It has been truly written that the history of Jefferson, its struggles, its earlier fight, its romance is written in this old cemetery. From the two iron posts that stand a few feet apart, once joined by iron chains, which marks the resting place of two artists who killed each other and are buried together, chained together, and unnamed, to the tomb erected by the state of Texas over one of Jefferson's leading citizens, and down to the tiny sunken graves of innumerable infants who died in the middle of the last century, Jefferson's age-old saga is told among the tombs of its ancestors. General Ochiltree's tomb. The state of Texas has placed over this famous son a lovely red granite marker, and from this marker we learn that General Ochiltree was judge of the 5th District in 1842, Secretary of the Treasury in 1844, and Attorney General of the Republic of Texas in 1845, also that the county of Ochiltree was named for him. Another monument that passers-by regard with reverence is that of D.W. Culberson, long a senator from this district and father of the Texas Governor Charles A. Culberson. The inscription on this monument is simple.
David B. Culberson, set. 29, 1830 May 7, 1900, erected by his sons.
Ross Hammett Spellings, father of S. A. Spellings, was buried in 1871. While an overground iron vault is unique in the story of burials, it houses the body of a 2-year-old baby, George Hoffman, and is dated 1870.
Diamond Bessie.
Almost everyone in the state has heard the story of
Diamond Bessie
and her murder, but not everyone knows that a few years ago the cemetery committee, Mrs. Arch McKay and Mrs. H. A. Spellings, working late on the grounds, returned early the next morning with their crew of men and found erected on the grave of
Diamond Bessie
a new monument with a simple inscription.
Bessie Moore 12-13-1876.
The monument that had marked the grave was entirely removed. The marking of this old monument, having been done in indelible ink, had faded away. The first stone is said to have been placed over the grave by noble-hearted citizens of Jefferson, but no one, other than the person who placed it on the grave, knows just when the last stone was erected or by whom, though various reports have been circulated, all different. We only know that it was placed between the setting and rising of the sun. Humour there. There is humour too in the old cemetery. Placed prominently in the centre of the headstone, under glass, where it has remained since 1855, is a photograph of a much-bearded man. It is a photograph of W. Sloane, who was born in 1830 and buried in 1885, and his stern face still rebukes those inclined to take lightly the facts of death and the grave. Mr. Sloane was a photographer in Jefferson for many years. On another stone there is this rhyme:
Remember, friend, as you pass by, as you are now so once was I, as I am now so you must be, prepare for death and eternity.
The story is told that once, in charcoal, a wag wrote underneath this inscription:
Be still, my friend, and rest content until I find out just where you went.
Over on one side of Oakwood Cemetery is the Jewish cemetery. This plot of ground is said to have been purchased by Mr. Jacob Stern and another citizen, who presented it to the Jewish people of Jefferson for a burying ground. Many Jews have been brought back to the old hometown, that their bodies may rest beside loved ones who have gone before. This cemetery is kept as nicely as these
chosen people
keep their homes. A low stone wall separates it from Oakwood Cemetery. Then on the extreme south side of the Oakwood Cemetery is the Catholic Cemetery. This too is well kept. In Oakwood proper, which burying ground dates from the time of Reconstruction, many bodies were removed from the cemetery in what is today known as
Sandtown.
Following the Civil War, many Federal soldiers were buried there. This is one mass of shrubs, graves and trees, with few markers, and only a guess can tell one where the soldiers in blue, who died in this part of the world, found their resting place. One street in the cemetery is known as
the Street of Graves,
and the legend goes that many unmarked graves are underneath the street. Should you let your imagination play, you can outline for yourself the dents in the earth that mean graves, as you drive down the street between the rows of modern lots. Frank Schreers and his father, sextons for the cemetery for 2 generations, have buried 9,000 citizens of Jefferson since 1870, when the older Schreers took charge. There are about 14,000 graves in the cemetery, the oldest having for its inscription
Rev.
Benjamin Foskey 1798-1850,
and which is still in a state of good preservation. And so, through almost 100 years, the history of Old Jefferson and New Jefferson is written on the stones in the cemetery, a valuable, beautiful, romantic history that we should keep intact, that we should value and preserve. Are you doing your part? Rose and Robertson. Well,
old-timers
are in a reminiscent mood. You can hear many interesting incidents of the early days of Jefferson, and one that few remember, and often wonder about, is the story of 2 men whose graves are in Oakwood Cemetery, and marked other than by 2 iron posts that were chained together. Mr. the hasty knew the men, and gives this information. Rose and Robertson let their hatred of each other and their love for a woman cause them to take the life of each other, a most unusual coincidence. Rose owned and operated a blacksmith shop on Polk Street near where the J. Fort home stands. As he was working one day, Robertson, a gambler, came across the street and entered the shop. When Rose saw him coming, he turned and started out the rear door, but Robertson had gone there with a determination to kill Rose, so without warning he fired the bullet that killed Rose, who as he went down aimed well and sent a bullet into the heart of his enemy. Robertson walked across the street and sat down upon the sidewalk, saying,
"That rascal has killed me."
And he too passed away. As a fitting finish, they were buried side by side, chained together, and only iron posts to mark their resting place. A few epitaphs found on some of the stones in Oakwood Cemetery.
Old Pop. Daddy, come here. I am coming.
Sweet babe, now quiet.
God loveth a cheerful giver.
She hath done what she could. I have 3 little angels waiting for me on the beautiful banks of the crystal sea. Not impatiently wait my darlings there, for smiles light up their brows so fair, and their little harps ring out so clear, so soothingly sweet to faithless listening ears.
They live in the smile of the Saviour's love, who so early called my darlings above.
Weep not for me, Carrie dear, I am not dead, but sleeping here.
I was not yours, but Christ's alone. He loved me best and took me home. Just in the morning of this day he died. In the midst of life we are in death.
To know her was to love her.
She has crossed the rocks to rest in the shade. On earth she was a dutiful daughter, a loving wife, an earnest Christian, in heaven an angel.
Papa's little girl no longer suffers.
Gone but not lost. Budded on earth, blooming in heaven. A loved one has crossed.
We will not say farewell. An honest man is the noblest work of God. It is good to have lived, to have loved, to have thought.
As a wife devoted.
As a friend, ever kind and true, in life she exhibited all the graces of a Christian.
Earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal. There's a world above where parting is unknown, formed for the good alone.
Gone from our home, but not from our hearts.
It is enough come up higher.
No pains, no griefs, no anxious fear can reach our loved one sleeping here.
This little story will not be complete without mention being made of some of the
bells
of the early days of Jefferson, who are here today to tell Jefferson's history. It is a rare treat to have as our guests Mrs. Ida Rogers Rainey, Mrs. Jessie Allen Wise, Mrs. Murph Smith Dewar, Mrs. Jenny Lyon Jones, and Mrs. Sue Jackson Hale. It has been the privilege of the writers of this pamphlet to enjoy several
get-together luncheons,
and to hear the
polls
tell of their beaux and the early history of Jefferson, along with the good times they had at school. I hope you enjoyed reading the book A History of Jefferson, Marion County, Texas, 1836-1936 with me. If you like this, please remember to like and subscribe. Please visit at Adonomy if you want to see different types of videos we produce. For statistics on our videos, visit at Adonomy Core. Visit our story reading channel website at https://adonomy.com/adonomyproject/adonomy stories/. Happy YouTube travels.